It was a calm summer morning when I received a knock on my cabin door. And there stood the HOA president, Karen, flanked by a couple of smug board members. They weren't there to welcome me or talk. Neighborly business? They were there to demand I move my boat. According to Karen, my fishing boat was causing ripples in the lake and disturbing the aesthetic balance of the community. I almost laughed in her face, but I stayed calm and asked what authority she had over the lake. With her usual arrogance, she waved a folder of HOA regulations and barked that if I didn't comply immediately, she would start fining me daily until I caved. I told her politely that her rules didn't apply to my property, but she cut me off and shouted, "Everything in this community is under HOA control, including that lake." Her board members nodded smugly, certain they had me cornered. Later that afternoon, I returned from a trip into town only to find Karen and her crew standing on my dock, shouting at each other while waving clipboards. They had crossed onto my property, pacing around like they owned the place. My boat was tied calmly at the dock, minding its own business, while Karen pointed at it and ranted about how this eyesore ruins the shoreline. That's when I'd had enough. I pulled out a file I kept for moments like this, my property deed and legal rights. The lake, contrary to what Karen assumed, wasn't controlled by the HOA at all. It was private, and I owned the entire body of water. I calmly handed the papers to the officers, who had just arrived after Karen called them, expecting me to be forced into submission. The officers examined the deed, looked back at her, and said, "Ma'am, you're trespassing on his private property." Her face turned pale as the truth sank in. She stammered, insisting there had to be a mistake. But the officers weren't buying it. I then went a step further. I informed them I would be filing official trespassing complaints against the HOA members who had stepped onto my dock without permission. The crowd of curious neighbors who had gathered burst into laughter as Karen's power trip collapsed in real time. The police escorted her off my land, while I leaned casually against my boat, enjoying the sweet taste of justice. From that day forward, the HOA never dared to question me again. Instead of me paying their fines, they ended up paying mine for trespassing where they had no right to be.